People think the worst moment of a wedding is when someone says, "I object." They're wrong. The worst moment is when the man standing in front of you looks into your eyes, and chooses to walk away. The church bells were still ringing when my world fell apart. Their gentle melody floated through the stained-glass cathedral, warm and hopeful, as if heaven itself believed this day would become the happiest chapter of my life. White roses lined the aisle. Candlelight shimmered against polished marble. Friends smiled. Relatives dabbed happy tears from their eyes. My 5-year-old daughter, Lily, stood beside me in her tiny ivory dress, clutching my hand with fingers so small they barely wrapped around mine. I squeezed them anyway. Just one more minute, I told myself. One more promise. One more chance to believe life could finally be kind. Daniel stood across from me in his tailored tuxedo, handsome enough to make strangers think we belonged in a bridal magazine. 6 months of planning had led to this moment. 6 months of believing someone had looked beyond my past and chosen me, not despite my daughter, but with her. The pastor smiled warmly. We are gathered here today, wait. One word. Quiet. Controlled. Sharp enough to cut through every heartbeat inside the church. Daniel slowly released my hands. His fingers slipped away like they had never belonged there. I'm sorry, he said, refusing to meet my eyes. At first I thought he was nervous. Everyone gets nervous. Then he took one step backward. I can't do this. The church became impossibly still. No whispers. No movement. Only the faint hum of the air conditioner somewhere above us. What, do you mean? I whispered. He finally looked at me. Not with love. Not even guilt. Only hesitation. I thought I could accept everything. His eyes drifted toward Lily. But I can't spend my life raising another man's child. My lungs stopped working. Someone in the back gasped. Another guest lowered her phone. A woman covered her mouth. Daniel kept talking. I deserve my own family. Each word landed heavier than the last. You should have told everyone from the beginning what you were. The sentence echoed against the cathedral walls. What I was. Not who. My face burned. I heard murmurs spreading across the pews like wildfire. She's the single mom. I didn't know. No wonder. Lily looked up at me. Mommy. Her tiny voice trembled. Did I do something bad? That question hurt more than anything Daniel could have said. I knelt immediately, brushing a loose curl away from her pale cheek. No, sweetheart. My voice broke. You did nothing wrong. She searched my face with innocent blue eyes already filling with tears. Then, why is everyone staring? Because grown-ups can be cruel. Because pride is louder than kindness. Because some people mistake a child's existence for someone else's mistake. But I couldn't say any of that. Instead, I pulled her into my arms. Behind us, chairs scraped across the marble floor. Several guests had already begun leaving. The wedding planner stood frozen beside the flowers, unsure whether to extinguish the candles or pretend nothing had happened. Daniel loosened his tie. I'll have my lawyer return the deposits. Deposits. That was what remained of our future. Numbers. Receipts. Refunds. Not promises. Not love. Just paperwork. I slowly stood, still holding Lily against my side. I won't beg you to stay. The word surprised even me. He nodded once. I know. Then he turned toward the aisle. Toward the massive wooden doors. Toward the life he had chosen over us. His polished shoes had barely touched the first step, when another pair of footsteps echoed from the back of the cathedral. Slow. Measured. Confident. Every head turned. The atmosphere shifted so suddenly it felt as though the entire room had forgotten how to breathe. Even Daniel stopped walking. A tall man dressed in an immaculate black suit emerged from the shadows near the entrance, broad shoulders filling the aisle with effortless authority. Dark hair, a neatly groomed beard framing a face carved by discipline rather than vanity, and intricate black ink disappearing beneath the collar of his crisp white shirt. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't angry either. He simply looked at Daniel the way a lion might look at someone standing far too close to its territory. Without raising his voice, he spoke. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life. And for reasons I couldn't explain." The entire cathedral suddenly felt like it belonged to him. Power doesn't announce itself. It changes the air before anyone realizes they've stopped breathing. No one moved. Not the pastor. Not the guests. Not even Daniel. The silence inside the cathedral felt heavier than stone, pressing against my chest until breathing became something I had to remember to do. The stranger continued walking. Each polished dress shoe struck the marble floor with quiet confidence, never hurried, never hesitant. Men dressed in dark tailored suits appeared behind him as if they had materialized from the walls themselves. 4 of them. Then 6. Every pair of eyes scanned the room with disciplined precision before settling back on the man leading them. He wasn't the loudest person in the church. He didn't need to be. Authority wrapped around him more naturally than the expensive black suit hugging his broad shoulders. His beard was perfectly trimmed, dark enough to sharpen the hard lines of his jaw. Black ink disappeared beneath the crisp collar of his white shirt, climbing the side of his neck before vanishing beneath tailored fabric. His expression remained calm. Dangerously calm. Daniel frowned. "And you are?" The stranger ignored the question. Instead, his cold gray eyes found me. Not with pity. Not with curiosity. As if he were confirming something. Then they drifted toward Lily. She tightened her grip around my hand. "Mommy." I squeezed her fingers gently. "It's okay." I wasn't sure whether I believed my own words. The man finally stopped a few feet away from us. Close enough for me to notice the faint scent of cedarwood and expensive cologne. Close enough to see tiny scars across his tattooed knuckles. The kind earned by experience rather than accidents. He looked back at Daniel. "You walked away from them." His voice was low. Steady. Every syllable carried absolute control. Daniel straightened his shoulders. "This is none of your business." "It became my business," the stranger replied, "the moment you humiliated a woman and a child in front of hundreds of witnesses." A murmur swept through the guests. Someone whispered a name. "Moretti." Another person inhaled sharply. "Oh my God." I watched faces change. People who had been gossiping seconds earlier suddenly avoided looking directly at him. Even the security staff near the entrance stood perfectly still. Daniel laughed nervously. "You think you can lecture me?" "No." The stranger slipped one hand into his pocket. "I think you already sentenced yourself." Daniel's confidence faltered. "What does that even mean?" "It means," the man answered, "that someday you'll understand exactly what you threw away." His attention shifted toward me again. For the first time since this nightmare began. Someone looked at me instead of my mistakes. Instead of my past. Instead of the child standing beside me. "You are Claire Parker." It wasn't a question. I swallowed. "Yes." "And Lily." My heartbeat stumbled. "How do you know our names?" "I make it my business to know important people." His answer only deepened the mystery. Important? I was a second-grade teacher struggling to pay rent. There was nothing important about me. The pastor cleared his throat uncertainly. "Sir, this is a private ceremony." The stranger reached inside his jacket. Several guests gasped. Instead of a weapon. He removed a simple black leather wallet. From it, he produced a business card and handed it to the pastor. The elderly man adjusted his glasses. Within seconds, every trace of color drained from his face. His hands actually trembled. Mr. Damien Moretti. The name rippled through the cathedral like thunder. Daniel took an unconscious step backward. I had never heard the name before. Apparently everyone else had. One elderly businessman lowered his head immediately. A city councilman quietly guided his wife farther away. Nobody wanted to be standing too close. Damien never acknowledged them. His eyes remained on me. You've been standing here apologizing for existing. My throat tightened. I wasn't, you were. His voice softened. Barely. And you have nothing to apologize for. Something inside me cracked. Not loudly. Quietly. Like ice beginning to melt after an endless winter. Damien glanced once toward the abandoned wedding arch. Then back at me. If the man who promised to protect you refuses to keep his word. He extended one steady hand. Allow me to make him regret it for the rest of his life. Sometimes the most dangerous promises are spoken in the gentlest voice. His hand remained extended between us. Steady. Patient. As though he already understood that trust could not be demanded. Only earned. Every eye inside the cathedral followed me. I could feel hundreds of expectations pressing against my skin. Take his hand. Run away. Cry. Collapse. Do something. Anything. Instead, I simply stared. I don't even know you, I whispered. A faint smile touched Damien Moretti's lips. No. It would be reckless to accept help from a stranger. It would. The answer caught me off guard. He wasn't arguing. He wasn't charming me. He was agreeing with every fear racing through my mind. Then he slowly lowered his hand. So don't answer today. Confused murmurs spread across the pews. Daniel scoffed. You've got to be kidding. Damien finally looked at him. I rarely joke. I don't know what game you're playing. It isn't a game. Daniel folded his arms. You don't even know this woman. I know enough. His calm voice never changed. I know she worked 2 jobs while raising her daughter. My heart skipped. I know she sold her engagement ring from her first marriage to pay Lily's medical bills. I froze. Only 3 people knew that. My late husband. My sister. Me. I know, Damien continued quietly, that she has never missed a parent-teacher conference, never been late picking up her daughter, and has never asked anyone to save her. The church disappeared. All I could hear was my own heartbeat. How? How could he possibly know those things? Daniel looked suddenly uncomfortable. What kind of sick investigation have you been running? The kind successful men pay for before making important decisions. His gray eyes returned to mine. I don't invest blindly. I swallowed hard. You investigated me. I did. Why? For the first time. Damien hesitated. Not long. Barely a second. As I said. His gaze drifted briefly toward Lily. I consider you important. The answer raised even more questions than it solved. Lily tugged gently on my sleeve. I looked down. She was staring at Damien with complete innocence. Mommy. What is it, sweetheart? He doesn't look angry. I blinked. Children notice things adults overlooked. She was right. His face wasn't hard. It was controlled. There was a difference. Damien crouched slowly until he was at Lily's eye level. He kept a respectful distance. Never reaching toward her. Never invading her space. Hello, Lily. She hid halfway behind my dress. You know my name. I do. My mommy says I shouldn't talk to strangers. A faint chuckle escaped one of the men behind Damien before instantly disappearing. Damien nodded seriously. Your mother is very smart. Lily considered that answer. Then asked the question no adult dared to ask. Are you a good guy? The entire cathedral waited. Damien looked at her for several quiet seconds. Finally he answered. I've done things I'm not proud of. His honesty startled me. But if I ever become part of your life. His voice grew softer. You will never have to wonder whether you're safe. Something inside my chest tightened painfully. No promises of love. No dramatic speeches. Only safety. The one thing Lily and I had spent years trying to find. Damien stood again. Then reached inside his jacket once more. This time he removed a folded document. He handed it to me. I unfolded it with trembling fingers. It wasn't a marriage license. It wasn't a contract. It was a one-page agreement. A 1-year civil marriage proposal. Separate bedrooms. No physical expectations. Complete financial independence. The right to leave at any time. One sentence had been underlined. Your dignity will never again depend on another man's approval. I read it twice. Then a third time. The paper blurred as tears filled my eyes. I don't understand. You don't have to. His voice remained impossibly calm. Not today. He turned toward the cathedral doors. His security detail moved with him. Halfway down the aisle, he stopped without looking back. If you decide your answer is no, he said quietly. I'll respect it. Another step. But if you decide your daughter deserves a man who keeps his promises. He glanced over one shoulder. I'll be waiting. Then Damien Moretti walked out of the cathedral. Leaving behind complete silence, and a decision that would change the rest of our lives. The hardest decision isn't choosing between two men. It's choosing between the life you've survived, and the one you're terrified to believe you deserve. I didn't sleep that night. Lily did. Curled against my side in our tiny apartment, she hugged her worn stuffed rabbit as rain whispered against the bedroom window. Every few minutes she sighed softly, completely unaware that our future balanced on a single piece of paper lying on the kitchen table. A 1-year marriage proposal. No expectations. No conditions. Only one promise. Your dignity will never again depend on another man's approval. I must have read that sentence 50 times. It still didn't feel real. At sunrise, I poured myself another cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. My phone buzzed. It wasn't Damien. It was Daniel. 37 missed calls. 21 text messages. The first apologized. The next blamed me. The last threatened legal action if I damaged his reputation by telling people what had happened. I deleted every one without replying. For the first time. His opinion no longer felt like the center of my universe. A tiny pair of footsteps padded across the wooden floor. Lily rubbed her sleepy eyes. Morning, Mommy. Good morning, sweetheart. She climbed onto my lap. Are we still getting married today? The question stole every bit of strength from my body. I kissed the top of her head. No. She looked down quietly. Did he not want us? Children never ask complicated questions. Only honest ones. I forced a smile. He wasn't the right person. She stayed silent for a long moment before whispering, but, maybe the man with the beard is. I laughed through tears. You've only met him once. He looked at me. So. Most people look through me. My heart shattered. When had my little girl learned the difference? An hour later, someone knocked gently on the apartment door. Not loudly. Not impatiently. 3 calm knocks. I opened it cautiously. A woman in her 50s stood outside wearing an elegant navy suit. Ms. Parker? Yes. My name is Evelyn. She offered a respectful smile. I work for Mr. Moretti. No black SUVs. No armed bodyguards. No intimidation. Only impeccable manners. He asked me to deliver something. She handed me a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. Claire, no pressure. No deadline. Whether your answer is yes or no, no one should face today alone. A car is waiting downstairs if you would simply like breakfast. Nothing more. Damien and I stared at the handwriting. Strong. Clean. Unexpectedly simple. There really is no obligation, Evelyn said gently. He instructed every employee to leave immediately if you declined. You mean, he's not here? No. He believed his presence might influence your decision. That surprised me more than anything. Powerful men usually expected immediate obedience. Damien was giving me space. Lily peeked around my leg. Is there pancakes? Evelyn smiled warmly. I've been told there are. 20 minutes later, we stepped outside. A black luxury sedan waited quietly by the curb. Not flashy. Not covered in tinted excess. Just elegant. The driver opened the rear door. As we climbed inside, I noticed another vehicle parked across the street. Then another. Men pretending to read newspapers. A woman walking a dog. A delivery truck that hadn't moved in 20 minutes. They weren't watching the neighborhood. They were watching us. I looked at Evelyn. How long have they been there? She answered without hesitation. Since yesterday afternoon. My stomach tightened. Why? Her expression grew serious. Because after what happened at the cathedral. She glanced toward Lily before lowering her voice. Mr. Moretti no longer believes you are safe. The sedan pulled away from the curb. I watched my apartment disappear through the rear window. I thought we were driving toward breakfast. I had no idea. I was driving straight into a world where every act of kindness came wrapped inside a secret. The most carefully guarded hearts don't open because someone knocks. They open because someone waits outside, without ever demanding to be let in. The estate stood behind iron gates taller than any building on my street. They opened before our car even slowed down. No guards rushed forward. No barking orders echoed across the driveway. Everything moved with quiet precision, as though every person here had learned that real power never needed to raise its voice. The black sedan rolled beneath towering oak trees before stopping in front of a mansion that looked less like a home and more like a chapter preserved from another century. Stone walls. Massive windows. A fountain so still it reflected the morning sky like glass. Lily pressed both hands against the window. Mommy. It's beautiful. It was. But beauty wasn't what unsettled me. Silence was. A butler opened the door before I reached for the handle. Good morning, Miss Parker. He smiled warmly at Lily. And good morning to you, Miss Lily. She smiled back. Hi. No one stared at us. No one whispered. No one looked at my daughter with pity. That alone felt unreal. Inside, the mansion smelled faintly of cedarwood, fresh bread, and coffee. Not cigar smoke. Not expensive perfume. Just, home. Evelyn led us through a sunlit hallway toward a dining room where breakfast had already been prepared. Pancakes. Fresh berries. Scrambled eggs. Orange juice. Exactly the things Lily loved. She looked up at me. How did they know? I didn't have an answer. Before I could sit down, footsteps approached from behind. Slow. Measured. I turned. Damien. He had traded yesterday's black suit for a charcoal gray sweater with the sleeves pushed just high enough to reveal dark tattoos winding around his forearms. His beard was neatly trimmed, and despite the obvious power he carried, he somehow looked less distant. More human. Good morning. His voice was as calm as ever. I hope the drive wasn't uncomfortable. It wasn't. He nodded once. I'm glad. That was it. No dramatic entrance. No mention of marriage. No pressure. He pulled out a chair several feet away and sat at the opposite end of the table. As though he were determined to leave as much space between us as possible. Lily broke the silence first. Are these really for us? Damien looked at her. Only if you like pancakes. She grinned. I really like pancakes. I'm relieved. One corner of his mouth lifted ever so slightly. They took 3 attempts to get them right. You made them. A few staff members quietly smiled without interrupting. Damien looked almost embarrassed. I tried. Were they bad? The first batch could probably stop bullets. Lily giggled. A genuine, carefree laugh. It echoed through the room like music. I stared at Damien. He didn't laugh loudly. He simply watched her laugh. As though hearing that sound was reward enough. For several peaceful minutes, nobody spoke about the cathedral. Nobody mentioned the proposal. We simply ate breakfast. Normal. Quiet. Almost impossible to believe. When Lily finished, she spotted a golden retriever sleeping beside the fireplace. Her eyes widened. A puppy. She looked at me. Can I? Before I answered, Damien spoke. Only if Max decides he wants a new friend. The dog lazily opened one eye. Lily slowly walked closer before kneeling a safe distance away. I'm Lily. The old retriever stood, stretched, and wandered over on his own before resting his head against her shoulder. She burst into laughter again. I hadn't heard that laugh in weeks. Maybe months. Without thinking, I whispered, thank you. Damien didn't look at me. You don't owe me gratitude. You gave her this. I gave her breakfast. You gave her a morning where no one judged her. Silence settled between us. Finally, he looked out the tall window instead of at me. I know what it's like. His voice became quieter than I'd ever heard it. To grow up believing you have to earn the right to be loved. I turned toward him. There was no performance in his eyes. Only something unexpectedly familiar. Loneliness. Then, before I could ask what he meant, a man in a black suit hurried into the dining room. He stopped beside Damien and leaned down to whisper something into his ear. For the first time, the warmth disappeared from Damien's face. His jaw tightened. His gray eyes became unreadable. He stood slowly. They found him. The room fell silent. I didn't know who him was. But judging by the expression on Damien Moretti's face, someone had just made a mistake they were about to regret. A man's true nature isn't revealed when he gains power. It's revealed by what he refuses to become, even when power gives him permission. Damien didn't explain. He simply nodded once to the man who had interrupted breakfast. I'll be there. The messenger disappeared as quietly as he had arrived. For several seconds, Damien remained motionless, staring through the tall windows toward the gardens outside. Then he looked back at us. I'm sorry. The apology surprised me. I'll need to leave for a short while. You don't have to apologize, I said. I invited you here. His voice remained composed. I don't like breaking my own plans. Lily raised her hand as though she were back in school. Will you come back? A faint warmth returned to his eyes. I intend to. She seemed satisfied. Okay. He turned toward Evelyn. Please make sure they're comfortable. Of course. Then, without another word, Damien walked out of the dining room. The moment the doors closed behind him, the atmosphere shifted. Not because anyone relaxed. Because everyone became even more focused. Staff members moved quietly. Security officers exchanged brief nods through hidden earpieces. It reminded me of watching an orchestra after the conductor had stepped backstage. Every person already knew their part. Evelyn noticed me observing them. He's very particular. In what way? He believes chaos begins the moment people stop paying attention. That sounded exactly like Damien. Calm. Ordered. Intentional. Lily spent the next hour chasing Max through the enormous gardens. Her laughter floated across the fountains and flower beds. I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen her this free. Not watching strangers. Not worrying whether she was in someone's way. Just being a child. Evelyn and I sat beneath a white gazebo overlooking a small lake. She poured tea before speaking. You're wondering who he really is. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't. She smiled knowingly. Most people think they know Damien Moretti. And they don't. They know stories. She stirred her tea. They know rumors. What about you? I know the man who pays every employee enough that they never need a second job. She paused. The man who funds children's hospitals without putting his name on the buildings. I frowned. I've never heard about that. That's because he prefers it that way. A breeze carried the scent of lavender across the garden. But, Evelyn continued softly, I've also seen him make decisions no ordinary person could make. The sentence lingered between us. Neither praise. Nor condemnation. Just truth. Before I could ask another question, the peaceful afternoon shattered. One of Damien's security guards sprinted across the lawn. Actually sprinted. His breathing was uneven. Ms. Parker. I stood immediately. What happened? We need you inside. Why? No time. His eyes swept across the property. Now. Every instinct inside me tightened. Lily. She looked up from playing with Max. The guard scooped her into his arms before I could reach her. Hey. I protested. Trust me. Another sharp voice echoed through his earpiece. Movement confirmed. A second guard appeared from behind the hedges. Then a third. Within seconds, we were surrounded. The peaceful estate transformed into a fortress. I heard engines. Far beyond the front gates. Then tires screeching. 1. 2. 3 vehicles. The guards exchanged rapid glances. They're testing the perimeter. Nobody answered. The first loud metallic impact echoed across the estate. Someone had struck the main gate. Lily buried her face against the guard's shoulder. Mommy. I'm here. I reached for her hand as we hurried inside. Heavy steel security doors slid shut behind us with a deep mechanical thud. The sound echoed through the mansion. Locking. Sealing. Protecting. Or trapping. I couldn't tell which. Evelyn finally looked directly into my eyes. Her calm expression had disappeared. Mr. Moretti was right. My pulse pounded in my ears. Right about what? She inhaled slowly. The people who came to the cathedral. Her voice dropped almost to a whisper. Weren't there to watch a wedding. Another violent crash shook the front gates. They were there. She looked toward Lily. To find you. Fear changes the way time moves. A single minute can feel like a lifetime, especially when you still don't know why someone wants to find you. The entire mansion fell silent. Not peaceful. Prepared. Somewhere beyond the reinforced walls, another metallic crash echoed through the estate. The windows didn't even tremble. Whoever designed this place had expected days like this. Lily clung to my waist. Mommy. I wrapped both arms around her. I'm here. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. A security officer spoke quietly into his earpiece. Perimeter Alpha secure. Another answered. Thermal scans clear. The language meant nothing to me. The urgency meant everything. Evelyn guided us deeper into the mansion until we reached a pair of heavy walnut doors. She entered a 6-digit code. The doors unlocked with a soft click. This room was built for emergencies. Inside, it looked nothing like a bunker. There were bookshelves. Soft leather sofas. A fireplace. Children's toys neatly arranged in one corner. Fresh flowers rested on a wooden table. Someone had designed safety to feel like home. Lily slowly released my hand. Can I play? Evelyn smiled. Of course. Within moments, she was building a castle from wooden blocks as though the outside world had disappeared. Children had a gift adults lost long ago. They could still believe walls kept monsters away. I turned toward Evelyn. You said they came to the cathedral to find me. Yes. Who are they? I don't know. You expect me to believe that? She met my eyes. I know who they work for. A chill ran through me. But not why they want you. Before I could ask another question, the hidden television mounted above the fireplace flickered to life. Not a news channel. A live security feed. The front gate. 3 black SUVs sat outside the estate. Their engines idled. No one got out. No one shouted. They simply waited. Watching. A man standing beside the monitor noticed me. He wore glasses instead of tactical gear. More professor than bodyguard. Ms. Parker. He nodded politely. I'm Victor. You work for Damien. I advise him. On what? Anything involving patterns. I frowned. What patterns? The kind most people never notice. He enlarged one of the surveillance images. There. A man stood beside the lead SUV. Average height. Dark jacket. Nothing remarkable. He attended your wedding. Another image appeared. The same man. Standing across the street from my apartment yesterday. Another. Near Lily's school 3 weeks earlier. Then another. Outside the grocery store. The pharmacy. The public library. Every photograph showed the same stranger. Always watching. Always from a distance. My legs weakened. How long? Victor answered quietly. Approximately 43 days. 43 days. Someone had been following my daughter for 43 days. I covered my mouth. No. You never noticed because he wanted it that way. The room suddenly felt colder. Every ordinary memory from the past month became something terrifying. The man at the crosswalk. The customer reading a newspaper. The jogger in the park. Had any of them been real? Or had I been living inside someone else's plan? The security radio crackled. Vehicle approaching. Every guard instinctively reached for the communication devices clipped to their jackets. Victor looked toward the monitor. Then relaxed. It's him. A familiar black sedan entered through the main gates. No sirens. No dramatic convoy. Just Damien. Minutes later, the study door opened. He walked inside without a trace of panic, though the sleeves of his charcoal sweater were gone, replaced by a fitted black dress shirt rolled to his forearms. The tattoos on his pale skin disappeared beneath fresh cuffs stained with faint streaks of rain. Or perhaps something else. His gray eyes immediately searched the room. They found Lily first. She was safe. Only then did his shoulders loosen. He crossed the room until he stood in front of me. "I'm sorry." Again. That unexpected apology. For what? For waiting this long. I stared at him. "What are you talking about?" He looked toward the surveillance photographs covering the screen. Then back into my eyes. "I should have brought you here weeks ago." The words barely left his mouth, when Victor quietly placed another photograph onto the table. This one wasn't taken yesterday. Or last month. It was dated 5 years ago. And standing only a few feet behind me, holding baby Lily while I waited for a city bus, was Damien Moretti. Some people enter your life because they choose you. Others have been protecting you for so long, you simply never knew they were there. I couldn't stop staring at the photograph. 5 years. 5 entire years. The date stamped across the bottom corner proved it wasn't some digital trick. October 14th. 5 years earlier. There I was. Standing at a crowded bus stop with baby Lily asleep against my shoulder. My hair was shorter. My face looked exhausted. I remembered that day. It had rained without warning. The bus had been 40 minutes late. Lily had a fever. I had exactly $12 left in my bank account. I remembered every painful detail. Except him. Damien stood several feet behind me. Hands tucked into the pockets of a dark overcoat. Watching. Not approaching. Not speaking. Simply making sure no one came too close. I slowly lowered the photograph. "Were you following me?" His answer came without hesitation. "Yes." The honesty stunned me more than any excuse could have. "Why?" He didn't immediately answer. Instead, he walked toward the fireplace and rested one hand against the carved wooden mantel. His shoulders remained perfectly straight. Yet something about his silence felt heavy. "As I told Lily," he said quietly, "I've done things I'm not proud of. I waited. So have the people who wanted to find you." He turned toward me. "They don't forgive. I don't understand." "You don't need to understand everything. I deserve the truth." His jaw tightened. "You do." Another silence. Then he finally spoke. 5 years ago, one of my closest friends died. The room became impossibly still. Before he died, Damien continued, he asked me to make one promise. His gray eyes met mine. Protect his little sister. My breath caught. My parents never had a son. His voice remained calm. They had only me. I shook my head. "I'm not your friend's sister." "No. But you were his." Nothing made sense. "My husband." I whispered. "Ethan." Hearing my late husband's name from Damien's lips sent a chill through my body. "You knew Ethan." "We served together overseas before our lives took very different paths." Images flashed through my memory. Ethan rarely talked about those years. Whenever I asked, he would simply smile and say, "I met a man who taught me that loyalty matters more than survival." I had always assumed it was just another soldier. Not this man. When Ethan became ill, Damien continued softly, he contacted me. I could barely breathe. He refused money. He refused influence. He refused every offer I made. His expression hardened. The only thing he accepted was my word. I promised him that if anything ever happened. He looked toward Lily, "Neither of you would ever face the world alone." Tears blurred my vision. "Ethan never told me. He didn't want you to feel watched." He wanted you to feel free. I remembered the final weeks before Ethan passed away. The strange phone calls he always took outside. The relief in his eyes after one particular conversation. The night he kissed Lily's forehead and whispered, "You'll always be protected." I had assumed he was speaking to God. Maybe he had been speaking about Damien. I tried to keep my distance, Damien admitted. You deserved an ordinary life. So why now? His expression darkened. Because someone finally discovered the promise I made. The room fell silent. Victor stepped closer and placed a thin folder onto the table. Inside were photographs. Documents. Maps. Names. The first page contained only one sentence. Target acquired, Claire Parker and child. The second page showed my apartment. The third showed Lily's elementary school. I felt sick. Damien gently closed the folder before I could see any more. They're not coming after you because of who you are. His voice was quiet. They're coming because of me. He took one slow step closer. I've kept my promise for 5 years from the shadows. His eyes never left mine. But shadows aren't enough anymore. For the first time since we met. There was no mafia boss standing before me. Only a man carrying the weight of a promise made to a dying friend. And I finally understood. He hadn't stepped forward at the altar because he wanted to change my future. He had stepped forward because he refused to break the last promise he'd ever made to Ethan. Family isn't always the people who give you their name. Sometimes, it's the people who quietly spend years making sure you never lose yours. The room remained silent. No one interrupted. No one rushed me toward a decision. The folder still rested on the table between Damien and me, closed now, as though he refused to force me to look at one more frightening photograph. Outside, the mansion had returned to its strange rhythm. The security alerts had stopped. The engines beyond the gates were gone. For now. Lily wandered over from the corner where she had been drawing with colored pencils. She climbed onto the sofa beside Damien without asking permission. He looked at her. Then at me. Only after I gave a small nod did he relax. Children always knew where they felt safe. Long before adults admitted it. Lily held up a drawing. I made this. Damien accepted the paper with both hands as though it were something priceless. 3 stick figures stood beneath a bright yellow sun. 1 little girl. 1 woman. 1 tall man with a beard. Above them, written in uneven letters, were the words, "My safe people." Damien stared at the drawing for several seconds. His fingers tightened almost imperceptibly around the edges. I have a beard. Lily nodded proudly. And tattoos. I see that. And you're really tall. I've been told. She leaned closer. So, you can stay. A quiet laugh escaped Evelyn. Victor discreetly looked away. Even several security officers standing near the doorway smiled. Damien didn't. Not because he wasn't happy. Because emotion seemed unfamiliar to him. As though nobody had handed him something so simple. And so valuable. In a very long time. He folded the drawing carefully. Not once. Not twice. Perfectly. Then slipped it inside the inner pocket of his jacket. I'll keep this. Forever. If you'll allow me. She grinned. I will. I watched the exchange with tears threatening to return. This wasn't a man trying to impress a child. He wasn't buying toys. Making grand promises. Or pretending to be someone he wasn't. He was simply listening. Something Ethan had always said mattered most. Damien slowly stood. I've already had legal documents prepared. I looked up. For what? The marriage proposal. My heartbeat quickened. You don't have to answer today. He placed the folder beside me. If your answer is no, I'll continue protecting you. If your answer is yes, nothing changes except one thing. What? When people look at you, they'll no longer see a woman standing alone. His words settled deep inside me. Not because they were romantic. Because they were true. For years I had survived by convincing myself I needed no one. Strength had become my armor. Loneliness had become my habit. But standing in front of me wasn't a man asking me to surrender my independence. He was offering to stand beside it. Lily gently tugged on my sleeve. Mommy? Yes, sweetheart. She looked from me to Damien. Then back again. You always tell me that people keep promises. I do. She smiled softly. Daddy kept his. My throat tightened. She stepped toward Damien. Not quickly. Not dramatically. She simply wrapped both tiny arms around his waist. For one frozen second, the most feared man in the city forgot how to move. His tattooed hands hovered awkwardly in the air. Almost afraid that touching her might somehow break the moment. Then, with extraordinary care, he hugged her back. Just enough. No tighter. As though holding the most precious thing he had ever been trusted with. I looked at Ethan's old wedding ring still hanging from the chain around my neck. Then at the man who had carried his final promise for 5 silent years. Slowly, I removed the ring from the chain. Not to forget my husband. Never that. But because loving the past no longer meant closing the door to the future. I placed the ring gently into my palm. Then looked into Damien's steady gray eyes. You once told me, I whispered, that my dignity would never again depend on another man's approval. It won't. I believed him. For the first time since Ethan died. I believed tomorrow could exist without fear. And in that quiet room, surrounded not by blood, but by loyalty, I finally understood something life had been trying to teach me all along. Power may command obedience. Money may buy comfort. But only love, patient enough to wait, and loyal enough to protect without asking for anything in return, has the strength to become a family.